2, 1.
Good afternoon, everyone. Is everyone hearing me in the back? All right, awesome. Well, I couldn't be more humbled and gracious to have two amazing panelists with us today to talk about the role of the senior marketer and the CMO and challenging the status quo. And I have two folks with me whose careers has always been about challenging and pushing the status quo. So we're in for a treat with this conversation. Joining me on stage is Jerri Devard and Diana Haussling. And I'm going to take a moment to give these women their flowers and just go a little bit into their illustrious backgrounds. And I'll start with Diana. Diana is a bold leader in e-commerce, marketing, and sales, known for her breakthrough thinking and transformative approach. Utilizing her deep expertise, she has driven performance at 4 Fortune 400 companies, leveraging data and consumer insights to engage customers. In her current role as Senior Vice President, General Manager of Consumer Experience and Growth, Diana leads the North American marketing, digital commerce, and direct-to-consumer efforts, advancing critical functions including integrated marketing, e-commerce, insights, analytics, and much, much more. In her previous role as VP GM Digital Commerce, she established a digital commerce growth strategy, delivering record sales for Colgate-Palmolive. Before joining Colgate, Diana was the Vice President of E-commerce and Shopper Marketing for Campbell's. She led the strategic vision for the e-commerce ecosystem, consumer promotion, and omni-channel shopper marketing. Prior to Campbell's, Diana was at General Mills and began her career at Hershey's Company in progressive marketing and sales positions. So you're the person that delivers the bottom line. Like, you're all over it.
And plus, I'm also the person with a tin can that's looking for money.
There you go.
To make money.
Jerri Devard, founder of BECA. I'm so honored to have you on the stage with us. Jerri is the founder of the Black Executive CMO Alliance, otherwise known as BECA, an alliance designed to champion corporate diversity and help build the next generation of C-suite marketing executives. As a former executive vice president and chief customer officer of Office Depot, Jerri was responsible for the P&L for e-commerce, customer service, all marketing functions, data and analytics, communications, and events, having previously served as a chief marketing officer. Didn't have much to do in that role, did you? just a little bit going on there. Advertising Age awarded Jerri with a 2021 Vanguard Award, which honors a woman in marketing, media, and advertising on overall career achievements. She has more than 30 years of extensive marketing and leadership experience at large global brands. Prior to Office Depot, she served as Chief Marketing Officer at the ADT Company. Prior to that, Jerri served as Executive Vice President, CMO for Nokia, based in Helsinki and London. Additionally, she held senior marketing roles as SVP, Verizon Communications, CMO, Citibank, VP, Revlon, VP, Harris
Okay, you can
Entertainment.
stop. You can stop. All right, they get it. They get it.
I have to give you your flowers. She graduated economics from Spelman. I got to give you that shout out. Shout out to all the HBCUs out there. Jerri has been selected by Black Enterprise as one of the 75 most powerful blacks in corporate America and 50 women to watch by the Wall Street Journal. So we have the goal.
Okay.
So beyond, the bio, can you talk a little bit about sort of the work that you all are doing now, and also what motivates you to do this work? Marketing is not exactly the easiest, and a head of marketing is not exactly the easiest role we can have in corporate America these days. Diana, do you want to?
Sure. Well, I'm a marketing geek, so I love this stuff. I can geek out on it all day long, but I think for me, what has been most powerful that I'm focused on is really on developing marketers that aren't so textbook dependent. We have a lot of great talent. We've had over generations of, this is how you do marketing by the books. There's a lot of books that people love and they ride or die for, but in this new age where it's really more complicated, there's digital, consumers are in more control than ever before. We have to train our marketers to not just go off of the textbook or the scenarios and the models and actually understand the human elements behind marketing and really think differently. And marketers today, are so much different from the way they were previously because consumers have so much more power. So it's important for them to really be able to unleash the power of subject matter experts. So my mission right now is to make sure that subject matter experts at every level, whether it's your search team, your digital team, have a voice at the table, because for us to do marketing in an exceptional way, we have to really make sure everyone has a voice, especially those folks that are the geeks in the seats with the hands on the keys that are making it happen day to day.
And it's so much more complicated these days.
Yeah.
When you look at the breadth of all the different channels for you to reach your consumer, you have to have that expertise at all the different levels. Jerri, do you want to talk a bit about what you're doing?
Well, first of all, Cavel, I have to thank you, and I have to thank Group Black for inviting me here. I mean, I got a lot of invites for Advertising Week, but this is the only one I accepted.
Thank you.
And I did that because it was important. What you do and the success of Black-owned media is really, really important. And so to the extent that we can use our voices to add to that, whatever impact, influence, or power that we have to make those solid and continue on for generations and generations is important. I would say that in marketing, what motivated me was I loved the work. As hard as it is, I loved it. If I was in the legal profession or accounting, I probably would have failed miserably, because I think you have to love what you do and be good at it. If you're not good at it, you're not going to love it, and if you don't love it, you're not going to be good at it. And so, you know, all of the challenges that people see, the subjectivity that people believe is in what we do, even though it's very data-driven, where you have to square your shoulders and straighten your back and look someone in the eye and tell them that you are going to be responsible for the overall brand reputation and success of the organization is really important. But it was something that was really natural to me.
Yeah. And you touched on something with data, and it speaks to this changing of the role of the CMO. You know, what are your thoughts on the current role of the marketer inside the organization? What is that job today? Because it looks very different than even 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, so the Black Executive CMO Alliance is a organization of CXOs, and I say CX because they are presidents, CEOs, COOs. Their path was through marketing, and so 38 of us get together and we talk about what those challenges are. And what's happening across the board is that they are asked to do more and more with less and less. And, you know, budget cuts, people cuts, but the scope of their job never gets cut, it gets added. And so I think the challenge is how do you show up with new technology, new targets, new opportunities, the role of AI. We used to talk about metadata, and now it's all about AI, and there's some people that are very bullish about it and some people that are very kind of bearish and down on it, but you have to understand how you can leverage that. But I would say that you just have to have your ear to the ground so much more so than ever, and not be in an echo chamber and really being external in how you get a lot of knowledge and bring that back to the organization, because you're just facing so many different stakeholders in the success of what it is you do. I'm sure, Diana, you're seeing that on a daily basis.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of living an experiment on what is the new face of marketing and what that looks like. So my team, it's called Consumer Experience and Growth. That means nothing to anyone, but really because it's how we think marketing should be going forward. So it's a makeup of everything from traditional marketing, so your integrated marketing, your media, your social teams, your advanced advertising, digital commerce, e-commerce, your search teams. But then we also have revenue growth management. We also have insights and data and advanced analytics. And at first, a lot of people are like, okay, those things don't quite go together. But if you think about the consumer experience and being at every single element, every touch point that a consumer lives and breathes, it's so critical for those groups to talk to each other and be driving the narrative forward. We start off and we have a lot of processes. We call it the baton pass because there isn't ownership. It's really around how are you passing the baton, adding value at the right moments of time, and allowing, whether it's the subject matter experts or the person with the most knowledge on the ground to be able to be empowered to make the call, and then allow that to drive the work and not having it come from, the golden tower on high.
Right.
That's really the environment, the ecosystem we're trying to create. And what's cool about it is, Colgate's a 217-year-old company. So to make a bold move like that, I think for me was very unexpected. But I just came, I'm fresh off of my team offsite. The energy was real, and our ability to connect the dots is that much greater because the team has more power than they ever did before.
To your point about the golden tower on high, how do you as a marketer get your fellow C-suite executives to understand that kind of transformation? Because again, this is about you're challenging the status quo, which especially in large, Fortune 500 companies, it's not so easy to turn that ship, right? So what are the things that you're doing that allows you to sort of move in that direction?
So I'm going to low-key brag a little bit. So I was brought in to do just that. I call it disrupting for good because it's not just disruption for disruption's sake, but the leadership team, especially our C-suite executives, which my leader is a part of, they're focused on, they want to be the best, industry best, and leading in this space. So they really look to us as the subject matter experts to drive that. And so that's where it's kind of coming from down from the top.
Right.
The self-awareness of being able to say, I'm not the expert on this, nor do I need to be.
Right.
I'm going to trust in you, hire you, build you, develop you so that you can do that. That's the experience I'm living, and that's actually what I looked for my next role as I was progressing my career, because I think for a lot of CMOs, they're trapped in the having to bring the receipts, prove your resume, prove the value of your space.
Right.
For me, it's more of taking the energy that the organization has to want to be exceptional in this space and guiding it in the right directions.
Amazing.
And then influencing. We're a very global organization, so how do you take what you learned in one market and really translate it to another and benefit from that?
That's awesome. Now, Jerri, you represent a tribe of CMOs that I'm sure are trying to accomplish a lot of the same things that Diana just talked about. What are they saying? What are those key topics that they're talking about when it comes to transforming organization, challenging the status quo inside of sort of their executive suite?
Well, I think that there, of 38 members, there are probably 38 different stories and ways of doing it. I can tell you what my experience has been.
Yeah.
And it's been, I'll tell you also how I got to that because of the mistake that I made when I joined an organization. So typically brought in from the outside, marketing is the area in any organization where you can bring in fresh thinking, from the outside. And typically when I was brought into an organization, I was reporting to the CEO, which sounds cool, but it's a hot flame, right? So you're a member of the ELT. And I felt, well, I've been brought in to transform things. Everybody's ready to transform. They want to be something different. They don't want to do what they've been normally doing because I'm here. So I come in and, I came in my first CMO role and I kind of studied, listened for 90 days, came back with this great plan and made it like the 10 Commandments, like boom, there it is. Let's all go do it. And I was like, who's with me? And it was like, nobody was there. And it was because I hadn't done the work to make sure that people saw their piece of the pie in what I was serving. I always say, make the CFO your best friend, or make whoever is in finance at your level your best friend, and make sure more than your boss, they know what it is you're trying to do and what the return on that is going to be, because they're in rooms sometimes when you're not, and they get to play God and say what gets funded and what doesn't. Yeah. So the mistake I made in coming in was that everybody was happy to see me and just waiting for me to tell them what they needed to do, when in actuality they were very wedded to what they had done, felt it was right. Who was I to walk in the door and not know the organization or the people, and then make recommendations as how to go forward. So I would say you build relationships that are really important. Right. The things that you talk about then become group ownership, and if there's someone else in the room nodding with you, have those meetings before you get to the room so that you understand, what the challenges are, but ask people what's wrong, what. And I also said one of the things that I would do, it's a small thing, but I always downplayed my role. I went to your office, I didn't ask you to come to mine. Yeah. I asked you, what can marketing do for you? Where do we need to be? And also too, I had roles where I did have responsibility for the top line. So the P&L was important, but I felt that it was shared. And I didn't hog it, and I made people see their piece of it. So it's just building that tribe of people that are gonna follow and be alongside you when tough times come.
Yeah, it's the idea of listen, decide, and communicate in that order, right? Listening to folks and what they say before you even make the decision, so that they're coming along with you.
Well, you can decide, just don't let anybody know you decided. Like, let people feel that they're part of that decision, even say what they said and say, well, that's brilliant.
Diana, you've talked about this, we've had good conversations that, your role to being a marketing leader has not been the traditional role of sort of going and getting the MBA, getting recruited by a CPG company outside of that to be, running a brand. Can you talk about how your path has allowed you to come in and be able to have such a different perspective on what is needed from you?
Yeah, and for those of you who are also Caribbean, I come from a very Caribbean family, so the fact that I don't have an MBA, a master's, a doctorate of some sort is like blasphemy. But as I started working, and working within marketing and sales, I really thought about the depth and breadth of experiences I could get. And in my mind, I was like, okay, so I'm not going to go down the marketing path because I chose not to get my MBA, or I was at that critical moment where I'm going to either do it or not. And I had some great leaders talk about building relationships that were like, right now, where I need you is learning digital commerce and e-commerce, because that's going to be the next thing, and we don't have a handle on it. So you can go get your MBA and get in line with all the other marketers that we have, or you can focus on getting really skilled and knowledgeable, but in this space, but in a way that bridges back to the operational model.
Right.
So how can we do these things without it just being the sexy, shiny, next thing, everything's AI, but really pulling it back to what's important to folks who have to report to the street?
Right.
And how do you understand and can translate those two worlds? So I got my MBA version of my MBA learning different disciplines across the organization. And I think for me personally, and I tell folks this, especially folks I mentor, you can go to the traditional path, and that is fine. And that will get you in a lot of rooms and get you exposure in a lot of places. Right. But you don't have to if you're smart and intentional about the roles that you take, the skill sets that you're collecting, the relationships that you build, and how that enables you to lead teams. So I went from leading marketing and digital to more GMO roles and like really general manager roles that allowed me to get a breadth of experience, but also lead a lot of different complicated spaces. I tend to call them my dumpster fires.
Right.
I gravitate to the dumpster fire, clean them up, and manage to bring a lot of other folks with me. And then we make that island a happy place that everyone wants to come to. And I think it's that energy and that ability to take something that's a little broken and pull it together that differentiated me. And I think the most important thing that I think is often underrated, and you spoke a lot about this, it's being a connector. When you're a CMO, most of what you're doing is either connecting the dots or bringing in finance, bringing in legal. We need to do things on social quicker. How do I do this in a way that's going to keep my brand as safe as possible? Yeah. So it's those skill sets that I was able to build that allowed me to build relationships, but also see past whether or not I had a traditional MBA or not. Right. And I think, at the end of the day, once you're in the organization and you're actually doing the work, they're going to place their bet on who they think is going to help them achieve the goal, especially if you're a public organization.
Right, and you talk a lot about how you've leveraged data as a way to prove what you're doing and investing in it.
Yeah, and you and I have talked about this quite a bit, and I think, I think about this a couple ways. First, I have a gut, I trust in my gut, I leverage data, especially as a Black woman leading in a lot of different spaces. Oftentimes authority is not always given to you right away because of whatever perceived biases people have or whatever it is. So it's really important to be the smartest person in the room, but not always act like the smartest person, allow other people to shine, but have the facts and the data to go with it. So really being able to be data-driven in your discussions, data-driven in your decision-making, and then, when you make those mistakes, leveraging the data to course correct quickly and help people understand and bring them along. I mean, that's the most critical part. And that's what I love about, the center of my team, which is insights, data, and advanced analytics.
Yeah. So you touched on a point that I think is, we cannot ignore the importance of it, especially as being change makers that you are. You are a Black woman in the room. Both of you are Black women in the room. How is that experience different? Because there's a lot of conversations happening today and throughout Advertising Week about the CMO and the role of the CMO. But when you look at all the CMOs and you look at the diversity, let's just say there's a lot of room for growth in that area. I'd love for you all to just talk about your perspective and your experience as being a Black woman CEO and what are some of the challenges there.
I don't know anything different. I've been Black for the last 40 years, so I don't really know another way. I just think, any Black person who's in corporate America, you have the grit that it takes to excel. If you get to a certain level, you figure that out. I think for me, I made the decision very early on in my career that I was going to go and be in places and spaces that valued me and valued my contribution. And so I looked for that. I'm also very thoughtful. Now I'm going to get a little personal on you. I always think about, living below your means, not just because that's what our mom and dad, or dad and dad, or mom and mom taught us to do, but because it allows you to take risks that a lot of our counterparts who don't look like us are able to take in a way that allows you to advance your career that much further. I think for me it's no different from any of the other experiences that I had, but I know that because I'm a Black woman, I'm a lot more intentional about the relationships I build, right, how I leverage relationships, and then how I use conflict, and how I approach conflict so that it actually enables us to progress forward. So there's a little bit more time that I spend thinking about, when I go into this room in this meeting, who am I going to meet with beforehand? Who's going to be the person in the room that's going to second the idea that I have? Or who am I going to actually pitch the idea for me so that it lands well? And it takes a little bit of extra effort, but that's really what it takes to be Black in a lot of these spaces. And so, for me, it's been a positive experiences because I've chosen spaces that want and are willing to not tolerate me, but right, embrace and develop and grow me.
That's amazing.
I think over years of leading teams, what I've seen the difference in the people that reported to me that were people of color versus white is that there was a lot of imposter syndrome. There was the fact that I don't deserve to be here, or that if I am, I'm going to fake the funk. If I need some help, if I need direction, I'm not going to ask for it because that would be a sign of weakness. Mm-hmm. So typically, if someone was in trouble, by the time I heard about it, it was too late. They'd already documented everything. And it really was about being lost, but not feeling comfortable enough. And not just in people of color, but in women too, I've seen this, is that, there is a burden of being right and being correct and not showing people that you need help. And I've always said that the best words that you can say to someone is, I need your help. Yeah. Right? You don't show up with a blank slate. You've got some ideas, but tell me how this would land. How would you make that better? And so the idea of also being authentically who you are and not being, when I came up in packaged goods at General Mills, it was like, you have to be like that person, be like her, right? And she looked nothing like me, she didn't dress like me, she didn't have a person, but that was the prototype of what you were supposed to be, and yes, she was white. And so, now there is certainly more leaning into the confidence of who you are because you see people that look like you. But also, too, I think it is this idea of owning your success. So if 100% of the pie is you getting to the next level, you have to maximize your 50%, and then you have to have that relationship with your boss because you can't promote yourself. You can't put yourself in rooms you don't want to be. And I just try to make people, Black marketers have more courage and more confidence. I think the best thing that you can instill in your child is confidence. But if you can't instill that in your child or yourself, then you have to find a way to borrow some, to be courageous at that moment, to be confident when you have to be. Not all the time if it's not something that you do, but summon the strength and a deep breath to understand that you're worth it, ask for more, that you should be valued, and if not, then you're not going to be a victim because victims are either unable or unwilling to change their circumstances. So owning your career, your destiny, and your ability to succeed despite the odds is pretty powerful.
It's amazing. And just to continue on that, you touched on a little bit about sort of support and borrowing confidence. Can you, for those who in the room aren't familiar with BECA, it is an incredible tribe. Can you talk about what was your motivation for creating it, and what purpose does it drive for the marketers who are members, or the CXOs, sorry, that are members?
No, I love that question because, so for so long in my career, probably when I got to be a director, things changed. But early in my career, I thought it was about climbing, getting to the next level, so I'm an assistant product manager. I want to be a associate product manager, and a product manager, then a senior manager, and grouper, and a director. And I was just like climbing one foot in front of the other, looking to see who was behind me and just kind of trying to get ahead. And then when I got to be a senior director, right before I got promoted to VP, I realized it was not about climbing, but it was about reaching back. It's like, who on this journey did I help along the way make sure that they made it? And while I was doing that because it's natural to me, it wasn't deliberate and intentional. It wasn't that I saw someone that wasn't speaking up or wasn't, kind of achieving what they wanted to do and said, "Come, let's talk." And so, that idea of being able to send the elevator back down and fill it up with people that are smarter and more confident started to become a part of what was important to me. And during the pandemic, as I was consuming a lot more, I was still in my role as EVP and Chief Customer Officer at Office Depot. I was consuming a lot of trade magazines and looking at a lot of webinars because everything was online. And everything I looked at, I didn't see anybody black. I was like, well, wait a minute. Now you all are talking about this subject. I know about 5 people that could have talked about that. You were doing a main stage. Why does that main stage not have anyone that looks like me? And so I started reaching out to people and just saying, how are you doing? What are you working? How's... And I'd come away from these conversations with a sense of, wow, they're doing great things, but we just helped each other. And I'd call the other person. I'd say, you know, we should formalize this because everyone's doing their own thing. But what would it be like? That old African proverb that if spiders unite, they can tie up an elephant, was about what's the power of what we can do collectively, not for ourselves, but for others. And so I remember going off into my office at home and just kind of starting to write something that became this idea of a nonprofit organization. And I made it nonprofit because it was not about making money. Right. It was about having an impact. And then finding out, like anything else, it's like a dinner party. You set the table, and then you wonder if anybody's going to come. And so as I set the table, which was, you know, creating a name and trademarking it and filing for 501c3 status and being able to have a mission and, you know, share, learn, elevate, pay it forward, which are our 4 pillars. We're coming together to share, learn, elevate, and pay it forward. And then I found people that we tapped on the shoulder that says, you're the top marketer in your organization. I want you to come for your impact and how you can make a difference for us, but also those that are coming up behind you. The pay it forward was the most important pillar. And so I found people that were like-minded, that wanted to make our dent in the universe and pay it forward. And that was the outcome. And it's probably something that if I hadn't founded it, someone would have, hopefully, I think, but it was past time for something like that, something like this to exist. We've got 38 amazing, super badass marketers in the organization.
And I 100% agree. I had the great fortune, and thank you again for inviting us, of being at one of your summer events. And the thing that struck me the most was just the nature of sharing and conversation that was happening between marketers, even marketers that could be perceived as competitive, because it was about elevating, as you said, each other and each other's organization, and especially in this industry, there's so much competition. It was so amazing to see that, and I think it's a wonderful initiative.
I'll just say, in the arena we fight, but outside the arena we hug. Yeah. And so
a little co-opetition.
Well, yeah, very competitive. You got to do what they pay you all the money to do, but outside the arena, and we're all just, you know, like the share. It's like, yeah, let me tell you what happened to me. I'm dealing with this. Are you dealing with that? It's like, it's not me, right? I'm not crazy. Like, yeah, that's really happening. Yeah. So that's the beauty of like-minded, you know, understanding and support.
Yeah, and you talk about doing what they pay you to do. So one of the things we're doing at Advertising Week as Group Black, and our co-founder, Bon and Bo, is leading this initiative, is talking about, we have a series we're creating called the Chief Magic Officer. And we named it that because so many times you hear these conversations, whether it's, you know, the CEO or the CFO, still not understanding what it is that the marketer does and their impact on the organization.
It's the least confident role that the CEO rates amongst their C-suite.
I didn't even know that's that. So how do we change that? Because the marketer, I mean, to what you talked about earlier, Diana, you are directly connecting the work you're doing to sales and output on the organization, but yet something is happening. I think it's a challenge that marketers are talking about, where the CEO, the CFO, others are not understanding that work. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's the difference between hitting your number for the quarter, for the month, for the year, and building brands. And I think once you shift the conversation to brand building longevity, so I talked about Colgate being around for 217 years, #1 brand in the planet, low-key brag, but if you want to be around for another 217 years, you can't just promo coupon your way to death. Right. That's just not going to work. So if you don't build that brand, especially in categories like the ones that I work in, which, you know, can be, you know, low thought categories in some instances. If you don't build a brand and affinity and a connection point with the consumers that is seamless, then you're just a commodity. And I think it's helping folks bridge the gap between, how do we, at the end of the day, we're all for-profit entities, get the biggest bang for our dollars? Do you want to spend $1 devaluing your product and teaching consumers that it's of a less value and quality, or do you want to start telling your story? For Colgate, for us, it's very science-based. Our science is, bar none, and I'm not biased because I've worked a couple of different places, but to really tell that story in a way that's exciting to people. So we did a couple of TikToks with our scientists after some college students found, some of our toothpaste, and no matter what you do, it stays swirled. And they used a little profanity, and we were like, what is it, rockets or whatever. So we pulled in the scientists really quickly. They talked about it. It was interesting. The Met Gala carpet looked like toothpaste. We were able to jump on that and be a part of culture. So there's a difference between being transactional and selling business to actually being a part of culture and having your brand be relevant to consumers. And I think once you start talking about brand building and separate those two conversations, then you can start talking about things like lifetime value. Then you can start really helping folks understand the affinity with brands. And the other thing that I do quite often, which is very selfish on my part, is I bring in a lot of folks from the outside, similar to what you said. So we recently had the CMO at McDonald's come in and talk about how he's been leveraging culture and having these little wins. And as you have the wins, you prove it out. So the CMO may be anxious the first time you do it, or the CFO may be anxious the first time you do it, but once you prove that win, the next time you go in, you can go bigger and bolder. You just have to deliver. And if you're accountable and you deliver, then you can win the trust.
Can I just say something? Because it's interesting, Diana. I think for me, at least, it's been that you have to know your audience, right? And when I'm talking to the CFO, I can't lead with brand building. I mean, he doesn't want to hear it. It's like, it has to be ROAS, ROI. It's like, what, I'm going to spend this dollar, I'm going to get 6 back, or 3 back, or 2 back. But when I'm talking to someone, if I'm talking to the CEO who has a concern around, our brand health, then I'll have that conversation. If I'm talking to legal, it's concerned about what we're saying and whether or not our claims can be substantiated, I lead with that. So you have to find the language that motivates the recipient of the information. And sometimes I had meetings and we never talked about the brand. We only talked about ROI. The danger of that is that you have to be able to do both. Right? As marketers, we know that, but it depends upon who you want to do what.
And where your company is in the journey. So my company, when they were seeking folks for my role, was looking for someone to build and drive the space. So they've already identified it was a gap. So as a CMO, you have to go in with your eyes wide open. Like, are you going in, educating, training, where are they? Or, are you building off of something that they've already established and they just need that right person to push it forward? So all of that is required for you to be able to actually push your agenda forward. And I think a lot of that takes putting your ego aside, because oftentimes you're like, I know this is the right thing to do. I ran this play before, I know, but is it about being right, or is it about making progress? And I think that's the question that we constantly have to ask ourselves when we get up in the morning, and sometimes we have to, kiss the ring or do whatever it takes to move that thing forward. You have to think about the progress that you're going to make in the end, and then how you're going to come back and show them what you've done.
So Diana, you said something that you tested, it works, and then the next time you get to go bigger. The switching gears a little bit, when you look at what has happened over the last 3 years, when you talk about all the initiatives around investing in Black-owned, investing in understanding how to reach, leveraging culture as a growth driver, there's a difference there, right? And the difference that we see, and I've been at Group Black, a year and a half, which is very different than everywhere else that I've worked, is that you're right. When you show results as a media company, when you reach the audience, when you deliver sales, when you deliver the awareness, when you deliver foot traffic, you see brands come back and say, let's do more of that, let's double down. But that doesn't happen in the diverse-owned media space. And I'd love to get your thoughts, because you have a particularly unique view, because you know personally the power of our communities. What are your thoughts on the last 3 years, these commitments, these initiatives around investing in Black-owned media or diverse-owned media, and how do you sort of view that and champion that internally in your organization? And how do, I would love to get the thoughts from your members.
I think if I give an industry perspective, I think, we have folks that have, they posted the post, they had the black box, they did whatever, the black square, whatever it was, but are they really down? Are they really for it? Is it really a value construct for them? So, some folks will do what I call like the vanity engagement, which is they're checking the box. And then there's other organizations that are really invested in it. And then there's other organizations that are really focused on making money, and then they're really invested in it because it's a way for them to make money. For where we are with Colgate-Palmolive, I mean, we are a global brand. Outside of the US, we have 90%, household penetration in a lot of markets. Most of these markets are brown and black. So for us, it's not a matter of looking at it as we're doing this just out of the goodness of our hearts. Like, these are our core consumers. If you look at our brands and who are the highest purchasers of our brands, who have the most affinity, oftentimes, depending on the brand, you think of a brand like Fabuloso, that is the community we're going after. So I want to say that it's altruistic and we're a part of it. It is a part of our value system, but it also is a means for us to deliver that delightful experience, engage our consumer, and retain their loyalty over time.
I think this is one where all marketers have to put their thumb on the scale. The easy thing is to say, well, the agency is going to, our media buying agency is going to make sure, we got black folks, there are more black folks that watch ESPN than, so it's like the want. And I think that marketers that are really concerned about this and concerned about not just from a black-owned media perspective, but being able to really reach authentically with the right message in the right medium at the right time, that they will roll up their sleeves and get involved and click underneath the excuses for why not. And then understand that the value comes from really being able to lay out your dollars, whatever they are. I used to joke and say when I was at Verizon, had $1 billion budget, it still wasn't enough money, right? It wasn't really, because you're trying to do all things to all people. But when you think about it, if you sit in the royal crown and not allow yourself to get involved in the work of the business, to know who the agencies are, to know who the leaders are, to be able to articulate what your company, what your organization is doing, it's usually someone lower in the organization that controls where the dollars are going. So you have to be comfortable being able to understand where that is and what you want to take it to. And that's why, at BECA, when we have our in-person meeting in December, we always have a black-owned media panel. We look at each other and say, okay, are you accountable for making a difference in your organizations? Where were you and what are you doing now? And what more can we do? And those are really important conversations to have.
I agree. So I know we're coming close to the end here, but I did want to open it up to see if there were any questions in the audience for our panel. I could barely see because there's light shining in my eye.
Testing. Hey, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
And great job, everyone. Congratulations on what you do. My question is, how grassroots is your visibility? How small of a outfit or company are you willing to see or work with?
Well, it depends upon what you're talking about. It's kind of hard to say in a vacuum how small. I don't know if you mean employees, dollars, revenue, footprint. I'm not sure. So
I would say, for larger companies, they tend to go with the names and the folks that they know. But from a digital commerce perspective, I think that's where we really broke the mold. And it was less about, are you a known entity, but can you do this thing that we need to get done? You're going to see a lot more of that in AI, because there's going to be a lot of the advances are going to come from kids or younger folks who are playing around with it and start companies, and they'll get billed and they'll bought. So it really just depends on the job you're trying to do and who can accomplish it.
I think he's going to clarify it.
Yeah.
But you answered my question. You have your eyes open for those entities.
I think the challenge is how you get in. So if you're a smaller shop, how you get in is really around the wins that you have, and it's word of mouth. So like from a digital commerce perspective, if I need something, I have my group of, we actually have a group of women called Eve that we started, basically because we're we're the onlys and the lonelies a lot when I was in digital commerce, so we started that not too long ago. And like, if I need something, I text a bunch of them, like, anybody doing this? And we're competitors too, but it's like, does anybody have this? Who's doing this? Who's doing PDPs with AI? Who's the best one? Or I'm meeting with this group, has anybody used them? So it's that you have to be intentional about advocating and getting active sponsorship. Sponsorship is a verb. So you need to make sure the folks that you work with, they like what you do, they're talking about it, they're writing about it, they're telling their friends, and they're saying your name in rooms that you're not in.
Amazing. So I know we're coming up on time here, and I know Jerri has a hard stop. So last question for you two. I'm gonna ask you to sort of look in your crystal ball when you think about next year, when you think about the future for marketers. What does success look like? What does that look like for marketers over the next year or so?
Well, I think it certainly looks like greater representation, a greater representation of those that are at the top of the food chain when it comes to marketing. I think it's also not just the marketing, but also their remit. I'm a big fan of global leadership because no country, no group of people is the same. Right. So that's important. So not only the reputation, but also the impact. I really want us to be able to look at, so one of the things we talked about was small thing, but you have to find those Super Bowl where there's only one black director, right? One black director, 50 commercials. What?
Yeah.
You know, when you look at the forefront of what creates, the currency of cool and current, it is us. And so to the extent that organizations tap into that and that we help, sometimes people point and say, that's awful, that somebody ought to do something about that. And I think, well, what are you doing? What does your team look like? What do the people that report to you look like? Are you being very specific and intentional about who reports to you and the dollars that you bring in and the organizations that you bring in? So really, I think this accountability for whatever level you are. If you can't do it, then you can ask the question why. Right. And so I'd like to say that we will have more Dianas in the future. We will have more people that are managers and directors that are going to come along the path and create change and have more black-owned media within the share that they deserve.
Yeah, I think for me, I do think those questions that you're asking and having them come not just from black faces.
Right.
And really having it not just, I am fortunate enough where my boss, who's the president of North America, he is, not even American, but he is someone who asks those questions regularly. In our monthly operational meetings, we're not just looking at the business numbers. We actually look at our D&I scorecard, but we look at it from a media perspective too. So I'm measuring myself on, not only are there different shades, but are they dark enough? Hair texture, people with disabilities, and we're actually looking at this data because, and it's not just, again, to be altruistic, like we want to be a representation of all consumers, and we want all consumers to connect with our brand. I think for marketers, specifically in their roles, there's so many constructs, I call them phantom ceilings, that hold us back, like upper funnel, lower funnel, this budget, that budget, and we really start having to break those things down and really think about the human engagement and what do we want that to be like and what are they looking for. Yeah. I think that is our biggest opportunity to stop trying to be, and I've been saying this a lot, we bring too much main character energy and we're really supposed to be the supporting cast. We're supporting the people who are leveraging our brand so that we fulfill need states and they have a delightful experience and it's seamless and they keep coming back for more.
That's
well
the
said.
Mic drop right there.
Well said.
Main character energy when you're supposed to be the supporting cast. Well, thank you so much. This has been an incredibly awesome round of applause for our panelists. And thank you, everyone. Please stick around for drinks at the bar and all the fun things that we're doing here in Culture Unleashed. And NBC is next, right? Awesome.
All right.